I wanted to begin, for anyone in the room who doesn't know, I thought, please can you just start off by telling us a bit about your medical background and how your medical experiences have informed your storytelling?
So, for anyone who doesn't know, I was an NHS doctor and specifically a consultant in addiction psychiatry up until a couple of years ago. And my very last job was in perinatal psychiatry. So this specific topic has, a lot of meaning for me.
Yeah. And the first series was set in the A&E, and as you say, this one now set in psychiatry and obstetrics. Why did you feel those departments particularly would be great in terms of the rich storytelling and, what did you want to portray about them?
So, I mean, we've got a couple of doctors in the audience. I think people often don't think of psychiatry as part of general medicine, and I have always been really keen to kind of shine a light on that and to show how relevant mental illness is in terms of general health and well-being, and what an important part of general medicine it is. So this was a gift of an opportunity that World and ITV gave me to focus a whole series on psychiatry and show where it sits within medicine and, just really how crucial mental well-being is.
And as you say, the whole series actually is focused on mental health and the stigma around it and aftercare. Obviously, as you say, your background, is that what makes you so passionate about it in terms of what you've seen and how you feel like, the general public should perceive it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely been an increasing amount of awareness around sort of moderate mental illness, but I think severe mental illness is still something that is very heavily stigmatized. I think it's very difficult for people to understand what it means to be really suffering from an enduring chronic mental illness. And, the gasp that came from the audience when they saw what happened to Rosie, I think shows that it escalates very quickly and can be very frightening for everyone involved. And I think it's something that does need to be talked about more openly.
It was completely shocking. I mean, as you say, the gasp says that. And also in terms of like how much, these different departments and the communication as well. Obviously, you've experienced that. Is that important as well?
Yeah, so I think what was really lovely about this series was getting to show not just psychiatry, but obviously obstetrics and A&E and how all the different specialties interact. I think it's no secret to a lot of the doctors here that there is an unspoken hierarchy within medicine, and psychiatry is right at the bottom, which is partly why I chose it. No, it's not at all. I don't know why that is. I think it varies according to country. Like in France and in America, psychiatry is very highly revered, but for some reason, I think in the UK it does become the poor cousin. So it's really important to show where it sits, and I think you really get a sense with Tom's character and Celine's character what that hierarchy and respect or lack of respect is between specialties, and I'm excited to show audiences how that unfolds across the series.
Yeah, well, it's great that you put it front and centre now, so everyone will be aware how important it is. Tom, this is, I believe, your first medical drama? Is it? Or playing a doctor, at least?
It's my second, actually.
Oh, right.
No, it is a long time ago when before I was 40, It was my second job was a thing called Casualty 1909.
Oh my God, lest we forget.
Yes, but that feels like a different lifetime. So first time playing a modern day doctor.
Okay, thanks, nice save.
Yeah, no.
And so what drew you to the role and also, to the story as a whole?
Oh, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I mean, very simply put, as an actor, when you're looking for parts, you're looking for the people you're going to be working with. Obviously, you're looking for a story that resonates with you, and you hope it resonates with an audience. And you're looking for a character that you feel like you've not played before. And those things were all there, but actually, the real thing that grabbed me, which is evident in this episode, but kind of continues particularly into episode 2, is just not only the quality of Grace's writing in terms of every character is so multifaceted and deep and they surprise you, but also the twists within it. you rarely get those multiple layers of writing in that way. You know, you got a thriller, but perhaps the character's a bit more archetypal. You know, but everything was on the page. I believed every single second of this, and it was a world that I felt like I knew from the outside looking in. But the human side of it was so clear to me that the second I read it, I wanted to be involved. And if it doesn't come from the writing, then it's very hard to get a show to really sing. And this was one of the best things I'd ever read. I didn't write it.
You heard it here first.
Even though I wish I'd written it, you know. I wake up every day and say, if only I'd written that, you know.
You're right, though. It is incredibly authentic, and that's the thing. I think that's why we feel so immersed in it, because of the quality of the writing that you and Grace did.
Thanks for that. Grace, I've got a credit now. Please don't.
Actors always stealing, actually.
It's back to the departments again. So James is a very complex character, and ultimately he seems like a good man, but well, at least from this first episode, but through circumstance and some poor decision-making, obviously this, terrible tragedy occurs. When you were reading the script, what did you think of him? Did you feel sympathy for his plight? Yeah.
That's a big question as
well. I know, so I'm here with a big question.
Because I don't want to give anything away about him.
Well, when you read the script for the first episode, then at least.
Well, I was fortunate I read a few more than just one, so suddenly he becomes kind of clearly defined in a way. But I guess that what is clear about him is there is an ambiguity, because there's an overconfidence to James, if you like. There's a familiarity when you meet him. He's relatively free in the way that he communicates, and he's not kind of confined by the social expectations of normal social norms and etiquette. He kind of wants to break through them. He believes that people are too reserved and they don't connect with one another in the way they should. That can make him a very empathetic and therefore a very good doctor, but it can also lead to a guy that can cut a few corners and take a few risks. Where you draw the line of guilt and responsibility and obligation and all of that, that's kind of a collective decision, you know. And so I had to look at the animal that he was and what his intentions were. And I, for my money, particularly when you meet him, it comes from a very pure place. He's a passionate man. He cares very much about the job that he does, which obviously Grace cares very much about the job that Grace does too. And I wanted to bring that in, but there needed to be something about him that was unreachable, unknowable, slightly dangerous. But it's like that thing, you know, like if you ever get a character that says, you know, they're charming, you know, the worst thing you can do is play charming, because the most charming people don't know they're charming. Yeah. And I think the most enigmatic people don't know they're enigmatic. And I think there's something about James where he just feels like he's on this course that he's fighting for the greater good, but perhaps he should step back and question things now and again, you know.
It's a fine line, isn't it, on a mission and God complex?
Yeah,
when you watch it on, because he feels very passionately about his patients. You can tell that he cares a lot, but then sometimes it can make him maybe slightly reckless.
I guess so. I don't know. I feel like it was nice to play a character that has such kind of conviction of what it is they believe is getting them out of bed in the morning and what they're fighting for. And I think there is a naivety to James. I think there's a slight juvenile quality to James, but there's also an idealism and a wonder to his kind of passion. Yeah. And I think throw all that in a mix and throw that into the situation where he finds himself more to come out in the story. I think it's a recipe for a schism. And I think looking at the animal in that moment when that schism has happened, you know, I think we can all kind of relate to that. We all kind of like just try and get through a day and make the most of it, and sometimes we don't step back and make the best choices, but that doesn't necessarily define the character. Yeah,
very true. What research did you do for this role? I mean, imagine having Grace on hand was very useful.
I mean, more than useful. It was my absolute centre of gravity. Not only because of Grace's history and her knowledge of literally James's job, but also because of who she is and how open she is and how supportive she is. So, I mean, and add to that, it was her vision. And I think everything always has to come from the writing. You know, you can do as much research as you want, but fundamentally, if it doesn't work being put through the prism of the story you're telling, then it kind of becomes slightly obsolete. that having been said, there's an expectation and an expectation on myself to make it as authentic as I can. But Grace being there and being available all day, every day, meant that she became the real crutch for me in terms of authenticity and expectation. And also, but not singularly in terms of the medical side of things, but also in terms of the psychological side of things from James's perspective. You know, how would you feel if you were the one in this position, if you're getting buzzed every 5 seconds, but you're overridden by this need and empathy to really listen to this patient? You know, how does that feel? Like, how does that manifest within you? Grace was my template, Grace was my skeleton, Grace was my structure, Grace was everything. And then I had to just try and find some kind of way of making that have a rhythm, you know.
Yeah. Amazing Grace. So,
Why didn't I just say that?
listen, I'm here all day. Well, for another half an hour. Grace, I wanted to ask you actually, what's really interesting I found is that, he's gone through this, Dr. Ford has gone through this very traumatic shift and experienced this tragedy. Yet there's no aftercare for him, right, or support from his management. Was that important for you to show as well?
Yeah, really, really important. And it's not to say that there is no pastoral support whatsoever within the NHS, but the number of times you do a shift, particularly something like an on-call shift, I think for psychiatry in particular, the number of junior doctors I know who will have had a patient who will have killed themselves or died through something that has gone wrong during that shift, and at the end of it you might have spoken to police, you've spoken to your colleagues, you go home and you deal with it on your own, and maybe when you come back into work you're thinking, is everyone staring at me, does everybody know, how do I manage this? It's very rare that you get a chance to debrief and talk about the horrific thing that has happened and that you've been through, and it's just seen as part of the job. Patients die, and you can't spend days, weeks, months going over it in your head. You have to see the next patient. You have to keep going. And I think for me, it was really important in this series to show what is a horrific death, and that essentially Dr. Ford has to, he's been on a night shift, and I hope it comes across that he's not just dealing with one patient, he's dealing with multiple patients. There are so many other things that he has to be across and on top of, and he's doing his best. So yes, you have to have a sense of self-confidence and self-belief, and that might sometimes come across as arrogance, but if you don't portray, if you don't come across as a confident doctor, the patients aren't going to be confident in your ability to make decisions. So you have to back yourself as you go through that. And yeah, I think it can be really, really traumatic, but you just have to keep going.
Yeah, no, I think, you've conveyed that, the inordinate pressure he's under, and I think, well, for me, certainly he felt such high level of compassion. Helen, Dr. Norma Callahan, she's back. She's back to investigate with George. What is it about Norma that you enjoy playing so much?
I've always kind of said that usually as an actor you get to the end of your job and you go, oh, I know this person now, can we go back to the start? And you obviously don't always get that chance, so it's great to be back for season 2 because I feel like I know her. I knew her better going in. The draw for me with her is that she's so unlike me, and that's always fun to do. She's so assertive, she's a bloodhound really, which I love about her, and really integral to her character is justice for those that don't have a voice for themselves. So I think that there is compassion there, which I love, and you see a little bit more this time. But she has a job to do, and I love that kind of steadfastness that she has. And just knowing her so well, getting to play with Jordan again, getting to meet Tom and work with him, it was, an easy draw.
She is incredibly tenacious and laser focused, as always. But this time round, thanks to her relationship with her daughter, we see a different side to her. Was it nice to explore that? We'll see it in the second episode, and as the series progresses, is it nice to play the personal side of it?
Yeah, I suppose
life?
there was a risk kind of after the first one of her just being this kind of cold. There's been many names she's been called. I'm okay with it. I've made me peace with it. But it's as a mum, it's you know, I know those feelings, those relationships, especially mother-daughter relationships, and you know, there's all kinds of mother-daughter relationships, and it was just fun to show that, you know, potentially she has a heart and she feels things, and she has this dynamic at home. And I mean, we all go to work and try and park our crap at the door, you know, and go in and get on with our day's work, but unfortunately, you know, real life seeps into work, and it was just fun to play around with how that might be affecting her day, her mood, her attitude, her approach, but the dynamic was wonderful. It was great to explore that and give her kind of a couple of extra dimensions. Yeah. That was great.
We should say that, I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, as well as being an esteemed actor, you also a trained nurse.
Esteemed, I like that.
I have to, I have to get this right. So recently you were awarded the Honorary Fellowship of the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland. Yes, Faculty of Nursing and Midwifery.
I didn't know they knew that.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Moving on.
Well, I wanted to say, like, how well, you know, because obviously you've got this vast experience of being a nurse, and how does the show capture your experience and kind of the challenges faced by the NHS today? Because we've said it's incredible. It seems to me, for example, as a civilian, incredibly authentic, but how does it feel for you?
I mean, I tend to look at medical shows and poke holes and go, that's wrong. That's not how they do that. That's wrong. You know, I, like a hawk, as most medical people do. So to get a script, and it's been said a lot, but it's very true, Grace, you are wonderful, a wonderful writer. And the script is so authentic, and it really felt like it was an honest portrayal, warts and all. I mean, it was interesting to listen to you speak to that, and I've discussed this recently myself as a nurse. When somebody dies and you remember your first death, you don't ever forget it. You become attached to patients, you sit with them at night on night duty. I mean, not you, you're busy running around like a lunatic. We're, doing all the other work, you're taking the credit. But we sit beside them and we do the hard graft and we get to know them. Yes, we are the muscle, and you are you get that, and we get the sweat. Generally, nurses' pay needs to improve. But you remember your first death. And I mean, I remember having to call the family. This is awful. And say that the patient was deteriorating. And I was a student nurse, and my hands were shaking. I was holding the phone, and I said, what am I going to say? And she said, just tell them he's deteriorating rapidly and they should come in as soon as possible. And he was passing. I mean, they got in with moments to spare. But you don't ever forget that. And you don't ever forget that the fact afterwards you're told, dry your eyes, go in there, get a cup of tea, and then get back out there, strip that bed, get that ready. There's somebody coming up from, like, it's just this cycle. So really, nurses, medical staff, doctors, any medical health professionals have their own mental problems from the job, because you've got this, unending layer of trauma that you're supposed to just suppress. And there's this thing of, if I ask for help, people will think I'm weak. They'll think I'm not able. So while there's pastoral care available and counselling available, people don't avail of it for varied reasons. One of them being, I don't want to come across like I don't know what I'm doing, or I can't cope. So when you become a counsellor, you have to get so many hours of counselling so you're able to cope. As a nurse, as a doctor, you don't get that. You just have to park it and move on. So I think what this show does exceptionally well is bring you right up, and I love this, camera work of sitting here from the neck up, with the person on screen, living with their stifled breath, with their sweat, with their trauma. It really lets you inside to show you that, yes, these people are human beings, they're completely flawed, and they are, like you would be, absolutely shitting it, when something bad happens. And I think that people like Norma and George, they're so vitally important, because mistakes happen. We are human beings, but somebody needs to hold these people to account. And that's why she's so passionate about it. That's why these jobs are so important. but so terrifying if you're on the receiving end. You know, I know you've said to me that people have said, oh God, that woman makes me sweat. I know, they have to be cross and they have to be kind of stern and steadfast, but they can't be emotional. They can't, you know, they have to take all that out of it and do good for the patient. That's an exceptionally long answer to your question.
No,
I'm sorry.
I mean, it's an exceptionally good answer, and they play a vital role in this, in the NHS. So
Yes, absolutely.
Emma, hello. What were your ambitions for Series 2? And can you touch upon any challenges you faced and also the highlights?
I mean, challenges. We'd had such an amazingly brilliant response to Series 1 that I think probably our biggest challenge was what the hell are we going to do now? And we had the framework of Helen and Jordan and the sort of MIU, but I think probably one of our biggest challenges was finding a world and finding a discipline that would be as sort of fascinating for an audience and authentic and speak to the NHS and the problems facing it, but also sort of wrapped up in a cat and mouse thriller that the audience had come to expect, and how we would kind of couple those together. Similarly, finding a character that was a kind of flawed hero that we could, we could follow through and have him under pressure. And so I think that was a big challenge, wasn't it? Sort of sitting down thinking, but I know that Grace pretty instantly wanted to look at psychiatry. And I think that, you know, her experience in that was a bit of a no-brainer. So that was fantastic. But, you know, it was eye-opening. It was massively eye-opening. And I think, you know, as we think about what we're going to do for Series 3, I think it's also wanting to reflect back what we're seeing in the press and the issues it's facing. And I know that, you know, the response from Series 1, it felt like it had done that. And so we were sort of equally committed. So our ambition was to try and do the same, but also for it not to feel like a lecture, or, you know, to have those thriller elements, to keep an audience guessing, to have that character that's got so many dimensions to him alongside a sort of brilliant ensemble who all have secrets, and not because they're, you know, twirly moustached evil people at the top, but because they're all under pressure. And I think, you know, exploring a new world was really interesting. So I think that was probably, you know, one of our biggest challenges. I mean, highlights was getting to work with Grace again, bringing back, you know, Helen and Jordan and that team, and then to introduce, you know, Tom, Celine, Zoe, you know, just a brilliant cast that can help sort of tell that story and give it that sort of distinct, fresh perspective. You know, psychiatry is a million miles away from A&E. You know, they operate in that same medical structure, but at the same time, you know, as Grace touched on, they're considered very different. They've got a sort of different rhythm to them, and the doctors themselves, the specialties, you know, it's all sort of very distinct. So I think, you know, it was a brilliant highlight to kind of throw ourselves into a different world with such a brilliant team. Yeah, enjoyed it.
And I wanted to ask you, because am I right in saying, well, I know you filmed in Belfast, but did you film in a real hospital?
Yeah, we were really lucky. So last series we built a hospital, and it was very much contained in that sort of A&E world and a couple of wards. This series we had, you know, I think a massive challenge, which is finding two different areas. You have your sort of slick, super smart hospital, which is where we were so lucky to land upon in Belfast. And also, you know, being a teaching hospital, to be able to sort of use their staff too. A bit later on in the series, there are a lot of scenes which have their real staff in the background, really? You know, doing, especially in the theatre scenes, you know, they were just instrumental because they just know what they're doing. They know what they're picking up. Yeah. They know where it needs to go.
They didn't need guidance.
They aren't going like, what the hell is this? You know, so that was brilliant. So we used that real hospital during the summer period, because of course it wasn't, you know, there weren't students there at that time. And then Chrissy and Anthony and our locations team and everyone in Belfast then had this sort of epic challenge of finding a psychiatric unit which fitted, I think, Grace had a really specific idea about these sort of crumbling Victorian buildings, the sort of poor cousin that's usually sort of attached but not quite attached. And So we found this sort of brilliant location for that, which was about to be sold and renovated. So we got a chance to sort of get in there, use that, and then with the magic of TV, splice it together a bit. I don't know what the official word is, but you know, you can see as he's walking through, as he sort of moves through. So yeah, it was great to be back in Belfast. It's such a brilliant. It's like a second home for World. We've done quite a few shows over there, and 2 shows back to back in the last year. So we've got to know the best places to eat, really.
Oh, well, I was going to touch upon that. Now, Helen, was there an oyster place I saw you recommend in the... You said you ate your way around Belfast, I read.
I ate my way around Belfast. To me, there is no bad places to eat if you love food, which I do. Yeah, there was a gorgeous oyster place, and there was a lovely just fish and chip shop, and then Teto, remember that place? That was good, yeah. I mean, I didn't eat badly at all while I was there, at all.
You've got to eat nice food after, you know, a stressful day filming and, like, decompress. It's good.
Yeah. Yes. The catering can be questionable on jobs, but it was lovely on this one. So.
Okay, tick. Yeah. Emma, I wondered also if you could touch upon the medical advisors you had, because I know they played a large part.
I mean, we've had great medical advisors across both series, and very much, you know, specific to the specialisms that we're looking at. Dr. William Shanahan, who has been on both series, is our sort of psychiatry, investigative-y sort of brain that's been brilliant, I know, and a massive support to Grace. Dr. Sophie Ralph and Dr. Abby Smith, who I think are here today too, who both were sort of advising at script stage and then were often on set. I mean, I remember a brilliant moment, stood outside the psychiatric unit when there's an event that happens in episode 2, and an art department guy showing Sophie blood and her going, I just needs a few more clots in it, and maybe not, like, can we just water that bit down, you know, to have that, I think, and I imagine as well for you, Tom, and for, you know, Celine in particular as well, like, actually how those assessments work, you know, talking through those things, what the equipment is, you know, we've been really lucky to have some fantastic specialists.
I echo that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Helen. Thanks.
He agrees. Grace, final word to you. I just wanted to find out what you hoped viewers would take from this second series.
Gosh, that there is...
That I wrote it.
Oh yeah, obviously Tom singularly created the whole thing, starred in the whole thing.
I'll never
every
get
single
over this,
episode.
honestly.
As going to
She
take
won't
an
either.
exec producer credit. Yeah.
I was the
Yeah,
catering as
some
well. I was
have
worried
been
about what you were going to say,
to-
Helen.
No, what do I want to take from it? That there's no... Oh, God, I get this saying wrong. There's no health without mental health. I think it is so essential to, like, yeah, just having a good and wholesome life, and that people might seem normal, but you don't know what they're going through or what they've been through, and yeah, just be nice.
Yeah. Well, nice.
And also that Dr. Ford, I don't think Dr. Ford is that arrogant. I think people will start to like him.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. I liked him. He's like, he's compassionate. He cares about his patients, and that's a thread actually that runs through even with your characters, that everyone's just trying to do the right thing by the patients. The patients, you know, come first. So, right, I think that's all I've got time for, but I think we're going to throw now to the audience, see if anyone's got any questions. Oh, straight.
Grace.
I think, wait, we've got a microphone, I think, so everyone can hear you.
Saw This Cold, absolutely brilliant, compelling, nice, gasp as much as it is. As somebody who's lost a brother through bipolar recently, it hit me a lot harder. So I just wanted to ask you, Grace, about when you're structuring the episodes. I mean, what's your start-off point? Where do you, because obviously there's a lot of information that you have to convey to the audience, and I think it's really great because I think, I was curious, when you were the twin and front about the investigation, I thought, I don't know much about it, but it really sticks in. So I'm just interested now from your writing process, how long does it take to conceive the episodes, and also how do you incorporate and dovetail the knowledge with the genre?
Right. Big question. So I guess for this series, I had a very clear premise right from the beginning. I knew the kind of the patient, the situation, and I wrote very detailed sort of on-call shift and what was going wrong, poured all of my own personal trauma into that. And then I have the wonderful team at World. I have script editors, I've got Emma in development and Simon. And because they don't have the same level of medical knowledge as me, but they understand the audience, they can help me thin out and make it much more accessible for everybody else. And then we also have our amazing our script consultants. So just to make sure that once we in our sort of drama creative heads don't lose sight of what is factually accurate, because I think that often does happen, all the scripts are sent to our obstetric consultant, Dr. Sophie Ralph, and Dr. Smith and Dr. Shanahan, to just check that even with all the kind of drama bits that we've added in, it all still is factually correct.
Anyone else? Oh, right at the back.
Andrew Eborn, Octopus TV. Occasionally do the RTS podcast as well. Absolutely brilliant. We know about the power of television, things like the post office scandal and so on and so forth. To what extent do you want this to be a catalyst for change in the deficiencies for the NHS? And secondly, actors and those involved with the crew is obviously a harrowing experience. What support mechanism is there for them when they come off the series?
Okay, so I'll do the first part and maybe give you for the second. I mean, it would be amazing to increase any kind of awareness of the prevalence of mental health problems. I think, especially female health problems, I think with postpartum issues, you have like 1 in 100 women might have an episode of postnatal depression. 1 in 1,000 will have an episode of postpartum psychosis, which is what we see here. And I think those figures aren't that small and people don't talk about it, but it can have absolutely devastating consequences, not obviously just for like the family, the children, but as your second part of your question goes on to, the staff that have to deal with it and don't necessarily have the proper training or the proper support. On set, I found it, even though I had written it, and this is a testament to our cast and our crew, I found particularly the 136 suite scenes very harrowing to be on set for, which I guess is a measure of maybe what a control freak I am, because when I'm the doctor in charge, you don't think about those things, but having to watch our like amazing Rosie be gagged, bound, and like she's really, really vulnerable in that situation, and going through with Tom what I would be thinking and how I would be trying to keep her calm, but also going through a catalogue of symptoms, signs, like what's gone on, what has she had, and also trying to maintain a calm amongst everybody else. Anthony Phillipson, our director of that first block, just created some kind of, I won't say magic, but it felt a little bit like stepping onto some sort of nightmare set for me, but it was incredibly authentic. And we had, I in particular had on-set support to debrief after, which is something I wouldn't have had in a real-world NHS situation.
I think it's a really tough ask what we put people through and what actors go through, I think, on any job, portraying any kind of character, and where they kind of dig down deep into finding that. I think Chrissy, our producer, and Anthony, I mean, I'd like to think it was a top-down thing. I think they created a really supportive environment on set, and with advisors, with an intimacy coordinator when we needed one as well. There was, I hope, a sense that people could talk through what was about to happen, understand what was going to, happen, and walk through it a bit. And I know the environment I always felt on set was that it did feel collegiate, and that there was a sense that people were there to do the best work possible, but also there to kind of talk it through. It never felt rushed. I always felt, especially Anthony, he's just such a chilled character that I think you sort of, as much as you can put in place that to just sort of enable people to do the best work they can. This
sounds kind of bizarre to say as well, but sometimes the more stressful the subject matter, the more pleasant a set can be. That sounds bananas, but it's like everybody's aware this is super heavy and difficult. Let's make all the downtime light. And there was you become like a family when you're spending that intense time doing that work together. We did spend some time together afterwards. We were there for each other, for sure, for conversations, for support. But yeah, the heavier the work, the lighter the load. That's an odd thing to say, but I felt like that.
No, I concur with that completely, yeah. No, yes, absolutely, yeah. You signed off.
Right, I think that's it. So, one last question, sorry.
This is aimed at Tom, really. Obviously, similar to Series 1 with Neve, your character obviously goes through intense emotional pressure. As an aspiring actor myself, what advice would you give to mentally or physically prepare for certain scenes, particularly in the climax of obviously the episode we saw there? And yeah, what best way do you make that come across on camera?
Oh, that's the hardest question of the night.
Sorry.
No. Ask away. Fair enough. Can I ask you a question in response?
Of
when
course.
you say aspiring, are you training at the moment? Are you open to do it?
I'm practicing. I'm
Wicked, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm doing the best I can. I did a year last year, did well, and I've taken it back now doing short films.
Class.
Yeah.
I think the hardest thing is putting into practice. I find, I think you can kind of theorize acting all day, every day, and have an idea about what you're going to do. But it's like sport in a way. It's like whatever else it would be. Actually, when you're in the moment, you kind of can't predict it. So the preparation is everything. I think it's a fair question about prep. But I find that once you've done the preparation, the most important thing is just to be alive in the moment as much as you can. And that seems so obvious and quite cliche, and then you kind of go, what does that mean? What does being alive in the moment mean? But particularly with the subject matter, this kind of high stakes for James as a person, but also as the story itself is such high stakes and important storytelling. I think if I was to have kind of carried that weight into a scene of the knowledge of carrying to a degree a story, be that with Helen and Jordan, Celine and everyone else, I think you kind of wouldn't even take 1 foot out of your hotel room in the morning, Yeah. So you got to kind of put out your mind. In terms of the stakes, I think that comes from the other actors as well. The first time I met Helen was in the scene. I think it was the scene. It was in an MIU scene. We hadn't spoken. We had about 7 pages to do together, And actually, we're both right chatters and got on like a house on fire. But I was in the corner with my AirPods in, just trying to stay focused because, I was just aware of how much I had to remember, let alone try and act. So I just think go like anything in life. You just got to kind of trust, throw it out there, believe that it will work, and hope for the best.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Good luck, man.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Just ask one very quick question. So I say congratulations, brilliant series. Authentic is a word that does spring to mind. I had my fair share of time in the NHS, and it comes across as incredibly authentic, including in the way it was shot. So was there any brief to the directing and cinematography team to create that?
So our Block 1 director, Anthony Phillipson, had actually directed 24 Hours in A&E, so he had spent a lot of time in A&E, and the first series of that was set in an A&E department that I had worked in, so we had these great discussions about that A&E department, which actually formed the basis for the A&E you see in the Malpractice Series 1, and the tone for that series and this series. So we had similar reference points. We exchanged a lot of stories about the kind of the energy, the feelings, the sort of the light or the lack of light, the artificial light, all of that. So Anthony's personal experience of spending many, many hours in and around intense A&E settings was crucial to doing that.
Yeah, it's beautifully crafted.
Can I dive in on that? Do you mind?
Yeah.
It's just to talk about Ray, the cinematographer who worked with Anthony as well. You know, he's worked on Line of Duty with you guys as well, I know. And he had an amazing ability to let you just kind of roam. And Anthony was very keen, and James, who came in as a second camera as well, Anthony was really keen for it to feel like that documentary kind of energy. He wanted it to feel raw and alive and something that felt tangible. And Ray was a godsend as an actor at really allowing you to move, and he'd follow with that while still getting the kind of the level of cinematography that is needed for it to have that thriller element. So I think Anthony was our beacon in terms of that kind of authenticity. But Ray deserves a shout out as well, because he really went with that flow, and he was amazing to work with.
Right. That's all we've got time for, unfortunately. But so all that's left for me to do is to please thank our wonderful panel. And to thank you all for coming today, and to say please do tune in for Series 2 of Malpractice.